Good. Okay, we're talking to Kiane Zawadi this evening because we are starting our summer program, which is our Jazz at the Triangle. This is our, oh goodness, this is our 13th year doing this program out here at the Triangle Park. And every time I come and sit around the statue there, I learn some new things about Ron McNair. It said that he hit his horn in space, and so it's so ironic that we're here in this park. Kiane, we were talking the other day, and you gave me some very interesting facts. I want to take you back for a few minutes to just talk about your coming up in the town we call Motown, Detroit, and then your transformation here into New York.
Okay, I'm from a musical family. I had a brother that played piano. He's gone now. And a bass player that played with Max and other people in New York. And I was a student of Barry Harris. He's my mentor. I don't know if you remember Sonny Red. Barry had a group of a septet, I should say. Had Claire Rockmore, legendary trumpet player around Detroit, and went to Chicago, and Miles loved him. And myself, Sonny Red played alto, and T. Houston, baritone player, that was in New York for a while. And I started off in my first real gig was in the Bluebird Inn, a legendary place in Detroit, where Thad Jones and Elvin Jones played before we did, with Yusuf Lateef and myself and Barry Harris, Frank Gant, and Milt Jackson's brother Alvin Jackson played bass. He had the gig. And in '56 he said, "Man, I like that euphonium sound. All I want you to do is play that euphonium." And you got the gig. So we had like a couple of nights a week on the weekend, you know, and that was my first real professional gig in Detroit. But prior to that, though, I played a gig with Sonny Stitt at the Madison Ballroom in Detroit. I was 19 years old at that time. That was about 1952. I'm telling on myself now. But
well, you don't look a minute over 60, so feel good. You mentioned Barry Harris, and Barry Harris has become sort of the standard bearer of the bringing up of musicians. Would you say that to be the case?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's they call him the coach now in New York. You know, he's been a mentor. In fact, he was a mentor of Lonnie Hilliard, played trumpet with Mingus and Charles McPherson. You know, they were a little younger than I was. You know, me and Sonny Red. They were about 6 years younger than we were. You know.
When you first run into Miles?
He came to the Bluebird Inn. He was kind of like on a hiatus, you know, because like Clifford Brown and Clifford Brown and Max Roach was.
Yeah, likewise.
Clifford Brown and Max Roach was the hottest thing in New York, and so Miles was kind of like on a hiatus, and he came to Detroit, and he came by the Bluebird Inn when we was playing there, and he gave me a little advice. We were playing like Sweet Georgia Brown, and afterwards he said, "Man, just keep on running, you know, like just keep on connecting notes, and you know, don't allow too much space in between." Although he was a real spaceman,
yeah,
you know, him and Ahmed Jamal, they allowed a little space in between so people could make up their own mind what they could imagine, what, you know, be a little. They were a little they can make up their mind what they might want to hear, you know, be a little creative in their own mind. But that was his advice to me, you know, just keep on running, you know.
So the space is all at the mercy of each musician.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say that, yeah.
Now you come to New York. What year did you come to New York?
To stay, it was 1959. I'd come here about 1954 because Sonny Red said, he called me up and he was in Philly and said, man, come up and make this gig with Bohana, Howard Blakey. He had a matinee in Philadelphia at the Blue Note. He said, come on, make this gig. So I went up there and made it was a Saturday matinee, you know, and so I rented a room up next to Minton's, you know, 118th Street. I stayed there about 4 months. I was getting a few unemployment checks. I had a day gig in Detroit, so I was getting some unemployment checks, but I got ripped off up there, you know, from the mailbox. So I had to go back to Detroit. But I came to stay in '59 with Yusuf Lateef. He had a couple of record dates and a couple of gigs. One at Small's Paradise. And so I stayed then, you know. I had a friend from Detroit. He said, come on, man, you can stay with me, you know, on 107th Street, you know. So ever since 1959, June 8th, I've been in New York.
So the Detroit, give me the Detroit team now. I know there's a few people out there, and I know you mentioned the Jones brothers. Were they originally out? I know you mentioned Hank Thad and Elvin. They originally out of Detroit?
Yeah, well, they were actually from Pontiac, Michigan, but I mean, you know.
Everybody comes to Detroit. Yeah.
I didn't know Hank wasn't in Detroit when I was coming up on the scene. He was already in New York. Okay. But Elvin and Thad, they had the gig before we did at the Blue Note. I mean, Bluebird Inn, I should say, not Blue.
So the Bluebird Inn was a spot in Detroit?
Yes, that was a joint. Yeah.
So when you got to New York now, who were some of the characters that were on the major scene of the jazz world at that period?
Well, I'd say the jazz set, Benny Golson and, Blakey, of course, he was here, you know. Benny Golson, Jazz Tet, you know, Hamp. I played with all them guys. Hamp and Benny Golson and Slide Hampton. He had an octet, which I only played euphonium with him. You know, I mean.
Yeah. So when you run in the train?
Well, I went by Train's house one day, and because Lonnie Hilliard was staying up there at 103rd Street and up off of Broadway. But I went by and laid some scales, some Arabian scales, different scales on him, because he probably knew them already, you know. But you know, he was very cordial. But he was shedding, you know, and he just went back into the corner and kept shedding, you know, did his thing, you know.
Roland is probably the man that you hooked up with at that point in New York.
Well, I'd heard him, Roland, because Trainer did this recording on a label, which I later did with on the same label with Donald Byrd, you know. But Train and it was Train's record date. It had Pepper Adams on and Curtis Fuller and Red Garland. This was up in Boston where they recorded this blues, you know. And Roland was still staying up in Boston, you know. And Red Garland was late, and Roland happened to be around. So he ended up being a piano player on this certain blues.
Yeah, well, you know, I know with Roland Alexander and Train is on the set, there's only one tenor player, right?
Oh, yeah, right, you know. Yeah.
So Roland Alexander played piano on that gig?
Yeah. But I met him, you know, when I came to New York. I had a loft down on East Broadway. And in fact, Sonny Rollins hung down there maybe a few years after I got there in '64, and And I met Roland up at the loft because a lot of the cats came up there. We used to have jam sessions, house parties on the weekend. All the cats had been up there. Max and Tony Williams came out there, and Max Roach was there. And that's where I met